When we need to prepare for a competitive event, our go-to company is the Army Painter.
Thanks to their complete range of paints, spray cans, and gaming tools, we're able to complete our new armies and units in no time.
When we need to elevate the quality of our models and terrain, the Army Painter is always our first choice.
You may not know this, but the Army Painter has sponsored more competitive events than any other hobby company.
Tournament and wargaming is in their DNA.
Visit thearmypainter.com to learn more about their amazing products.
And use promo code AW Paints for a 5% discount from your Army Painter purchases.
What are you waiting for? Discover the best way to prepare your models for events with the Army Painter today.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another exciting Tier List Tuesday. Today, we're going to be talking about the top 10 best vehicles in the entire game of Warhammer 40,000.
That's right. You thought it was over, but no, it has only just begun. We've got top 10 monsters coming up next week. We just did top 10 characters. Before that, we did top 10 data sheets. You're getting some of the best, the cream of the crop.
I'm having a really good time with these little top 10 with you, Jack.
Yeah, it's just fun. We just chat about Warhammer.
I know, it's really, really good time.
Yeah. Quentin and Jack hanging out.
I know. So if you missed our spiel last time, this is going to be vehicles that we thought felt like vehicles. That's important because characters was last week. And so on this list, there's going to go ahead and be some characters, but all of the characters that are on this this week really aren't leaders. They function more as independent units. A lot of times they're like big and beefy and have large stats, and they felt more like vehicles than they felt like characters.
So, for example, second best character was Vol. Vol is a vehicle, but Vol feels like a character. She passes the vibe check for character, and so she made the top 10 character list. She will not be featuring on this list today. One list per data sheet. Sorry, I don't make the rules.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
So yeah, it's really not like a hard and fast thing. It's more of just what we felt like when we were making the list.
Absolutely. But if you want more content like this, or maybe even more deep dives, you can go check out the War Room at thewarroom.vhx.tv. If that is a bit of a mouthful for you, there's a link down in the description where there is a free 3-day trial of the website. If you want to go watch any of our videos, any of our content, including a video that Quinn and I recorded recently, deep diving our current thoughts on the Eldar Index. You can go watch that right now. That just released like 10 minutes ago. Yeah.
It's also really exciting. A Death Guard versus Admech game that literally comes down to the very last die roll.
Absolutely. Okay. Whale.
Why don't we just go ahead and dive in with some honorable mentions?
I think we should dive in with some honorable mentions. First up is the classification that would have taken over like slots 6 through 10 of the tier list.
Yep, which is the dedicated transport. This includes anything that is just a box you put your dudes in that doesn't do anything else. So rhinos, chimeras, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's some like gradation on there of like some of them have more guns than others. There is a dedicated transport that made this list because it feels like it's more of a gun
shooting
platform.
Mm-hmm.
Astute eagle-eyed viewers might figure out which one that is. But most dedicated transports, even if they have some guns, right? Like the Rhino is a really good data sheet for a lot of armies.
Yeah.
It has firing deck 2. It has some storm bolters. It has a hunter-killer missile. So it doesn't not shoot. But something like the Dune Rider fires 18 twin-linked shots with sustained, which some might say is too much. Myself,
some would say that.
I would say that. I would say that.
Yeah.
I would say it's too much. Why does it have so many guns?
It's way too many guns.
The Devilfish moves really, really fast.
The Venom lets you guys get back inside.
The Chimera has a lot of firing deck. I believe it's like firing deck ridiculous. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
It's not my army. But basically, these data sheets are similar because they're a box you put your dudes in, which is very helpful in 40k. And it would have been like 5 of the spots on the list if we had allowed them to be separate. And they would have all been for the same reasons, which is why we want to glom them together.
Yeah. A lot of the strength of dedicated transport doesn't come from like the fact that it's tougher or the fact that it has a lot of guns. Just being in a transport is super valuable. Typically, they're fairly cheap. They offer the guys inside a layer of protection that you can't get with anything else because a lot of times they're in a vehicle that requires several additional attacks to kill and before you can hit the guys inside.
Yeah, dedicated transports are quite good. I think I did a video on why dedicated transports were really good as a Jack Theory video, like 5 months ago or something.
You can check that out in the War Room.
You can check that out in the War Room. That's seamless vertical integration right there. Anyway, dedicated transport's very solid, but very solid just because of they are the option that you have, not because of too much inherent with them specifically, right? Like,
no, totally.
Like the Rhino is the best dedicated transport Space Marines have, so that's the one you see. I mean, Impulsors too. Impulsor's probably actually the best one Space Marines have. CSM is
the Rhino.
Or Death Guard or the Rhino. Sisters is the Rhino.
World Leaders, the Rhino.
World Leaders, it's the Rhino, right? Like, it's just is the option that you have, so it's nothing special about it. Just that's the one you get. So
yeah.
There's like 5 of them like that, right? Devilfish, you can't take a Rhino in Tau, right? Devilfish is just the box you get, so it's the good one in that army.
Are we going to handle super chats at the end here?
Let's handle super chats all at the end.
Or at the end. All right. So if you want to super chat us, we're going to get those at the end of the video.
Yes, the Ghost Arc as well. Also quite good. Deserves a mention here.
I think just like dedicated transport as a tag is just like a good, solid thing to have.
Yeah. Unless it's the Razorback
or the Wave Serpent,
or the Wave Serpent. Wave Serpent's kind of not that great.
Yeah, it's not that great. All right, our next honorable mention is the Forgefiend, and you'll notice here I did not specify what kind of Forgefiend it is, and the answer for that is because they're all quite good.
They are all quite good. The CSM one is the most expensive.
It is. It also does way more damage.
It's the best one for sure.
It is also way more expensive. So
it is 200
pay
points.
For it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It also absolutely ragdolls units across the table when you shoot it, and also hilariously can kill itself, which is
very quickly,
pretty funny. Yeah. I have seen the magical fail pact, do 3, fail 3 hazardous rolls, and remove unit from table.
Yeah, in the words of Tim Pinney, those guys really burn the candle on both ends.
They really do. But they do a ton of damage, and I don't want to forget, like this thing is not that different from the one that was terrorizing the meta 6 months ago, right? 8 months ago. It does slightly less damage because undivided ones don't shoot quite as hard as they did before, and it is like 20 points more expensive. But the Nurgle Forgefiend wrecks people.
Yeah.
Absolutely wrecks people. Something about sustained 5s, and you can give it full reels to hit if you take Abaddon, and then it just shoots people until they are dead.
So there are 3 varieties of Forgefiends the game is seeing right now. The most common one is the Chaos Space Marine Forgefiends. In Chaos Space Marines, you can give reels to hit. You can give it like lethal or sustained 5s or both. You can give it as pack generally. And then in CSM, it can get devastating wounds. It's a lot more expensive. It does a lot more damage. And then there's a World Eaters and 1,000 Suns Forgefiends that are basically just a data sheet. They don't get rerolls, they don't get dev wounds, they don't get anything else special. Their unit abilities are typically pretty bad, but they are just a solid shooting piece that you can plunk down.
Yep. I've played extensively with the World Eaters Forgefiend, which has been called quite bad, and that is incorrect. Yep. I will tell you that straight up. That is incorrect. The World Eaters Forgefiend is dramatically cheaper than the CSM one and does not hurt itself.
Yes.
And that is super nice. It does not fail pack checks. Its guns aren't hazardous, right? The ectoplasmic cannon is not inherently hazardous.
Yeah.
And so for 145, which is, what I would do is I'd walk up to the table and I'd tell my opponent, yeah, it has a special rule, and the special rule is costing 55 points cheaper. Like, it technically can battle shock people, which sometimes comes up. It's nice. It's not nothing. But it's just a very good shooting platform for very low prices.
I mean, all 3 of them are still 3d3 shots blast at like 10-3-3.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good gun.
It's a very good gun.
Yeah. And
it can get rerolls to hit off of Angron if you really want. And it's just absolutely super cheap.
Yes.
And that's great. A pair of those is $290. I don't really even need them to do anything in order for me to be happy that they're there. And then when they do, I'm like, oh my God, they're so good. They're so good.
I think they're also still like 12 wounds, toughness 10 with a 5-up invuln.
Oh yeah,
they're not
tough.
Free to kill.
OC3 really matters sometimes. Yeah. And the fact that it's just 145 means it has a lot of life, whereas like it's just a really good unit.
Yeah.
If you want to run 2 of those in World Eaters, you are cooking with gas.
Yep. The base Forgefiend is quite good. I think Brian Snipe is taking 2 in 1,000 Suns as well.
Yeah, it's good in 1,000 Suns. Just good profile. 10-3-3 with triple blast is very strong.
Yep. Moving on to our next honorable mention, we have another kind of cross-pollination unit here, the Vindicator.
Yeah.
This is another data sheet that we think is really good in both the Loyalist and Heretic varieties. It's a gun that's got a Demolisher cannon, which is like super good. The Loyalist one has access to Ironstorm buffs and Oath and a Hunter Killer Missile. The Chaos Space Marine version has access to Abaddon rerolls and Hellbrutes and Packbound.
And yeah, Nurgle strat for
Nurgle
sustained
strat, yeah.
5s. Yeah, it's quite good.
Yeah, so it's d6 plus 3 shots at 14, 3 d6 damage blast, which is fairly swingy by itself. So the like base Vindicator for like 190 points, I think it is.
It's 185 for the CSM one, 175 for the Loyalists.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. That's so cheap.
Yeah, they're a solid, good tank with a 2 armor save. And you can stack a lot of buffs on them really well to the point where they just shoot anything to death.
They're also toughness 11, which is a really good breakpoint.
It's a great breakpoint, yeah.
Because there's a lot of strength 10 guns in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they just have very little purchase on your vehicle. Also, armor contempt with a 2-up in cover means they're just harder to kill than your opponent like is willing to put effort into. And they're good. Their gun is good into everything, pretty much. Because it's blast with a lot of shots that is high strength, AP, and damage. So it's good into vehicles, and it's good into elite infantry, and it's good into hordes, and it can shoot into its own combat.
Which is relevant.
Yeah, it will not get stuck there. There's plenty of ways to give it advance and shoot. I know in Loyalist, there's like the Caladius going Devastator Doctrine, which is really, really strong. The one thing I will say about it is not a tank that is good if you just shoot it alone.
Mm-hmm.
If you just fire one at one target
with no buffs,
anything can happen.
It's very swingy.
I have seen it one-shot a Leman Russ with no buffs, and I've seen it fail to kill anything. The thing you need to do is you need to drive. It's durable, right? Use that durability. Let its datasheet do its job. Go forward with multiples of them while putting pressure on your opponent with other stuff and just shoot for 5 turns of the game and apply buffs, and it will blow things apart.
This is the datasheet that takes buffs really well. It doesn't get buffed linearly. It gets buffed like exponentially.
Yeah. So like rerolls to hit, sustained, all that. Like suddenly rerolls to hit, sustained 5s, maybe a CP roll on the shot count, and you just blast a knight into orbit.
The last time I talked about this data sheet, I think, was in the CSM tier list. And someone, I forgot who, super chatted to put in chat. But the Chaos Vindicator has a damage, like the damage like range of what it can do is like -3 to like 500 and something.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's definitely a data sheet where if you just, your opponent is incentivized to let you keep shooting it because it's so tough that it draws a lot of resources from your opponent in order to try to kill. And so they decide not to do that, and then they just take another round of shooting and another round of shooting and another round of shooting, and eventually they're dead.
Yep.
And if you have a pair of Vindicators, which I think they're, some vehicles want to be in 3s, some want to be in 2s, some want to be in 1s. Vindicator wants to be in pairs.
I think 2 is the right number.
2 feels like the right number. It's part of a balanced breakfast. It can go forward as part of a durability skew and just push your opponent. And if they let it live, because maybe some other things on this list are more threatening, or maybe your opponent has like Deathwing Knights in their face, or they have to deal with, rhinos with Chosen in them, or Legionaries, or whatever the heck, and they just let it shoot. They let 2 or 3 of them shoot for 2 or 3 turns. They're just dead.
Yeah. They're really quite good. All right. Number 10, the first on our top 10 vehicles list, we have the Land Raider Redeemer, a favorite of yours, Jack. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about what this does?
God, I love the Land Raider Redeemer. It's, okay, so it recently went up in points, which is probably why it's not higher, in my opinion. But it is still an insane unit. It gives you access to a thing your army just doesn't have otherwise. Let's go over its stats. It is toughness 12 with 16 wounds and a 2-up with access to armor of contempt and very easy access to cover. So that means it's going to be like most armies have to pivot away from whatever they're doing to throw all their resources into the Redeemer. And that is not fun, especially since it might not work. Then next up, let's talk about its guns. So its guns is I'm going to bury the lead a little bit here. It's got twin assault cannon, which is very good for chipping a wound or 2 off. It's got a multi-melta, which is very good at killing random stuff or punching vehicles or whatever. It's got a Hunter Killer Missile. It's got a Storm Bolter. That's all cool. It's got 2 Flamestorm Cannons. The 2 Flamestorm Cannons are each D6 plus 3 shots, auto hitting at 6, strength 6, AP 2, damage 2, ignores cover. 12-inch range only, but that makes it 2d6 plus 6, which means it's a miserable Overwatch to take.
Very good in Overwatch.
It'll just murder you in Overwatch. It also is insane into mid-level targets. It will Overwatch vehicles to death. I've had it do that. I had my opponent run up a Rhino and was like, bye, gone, dead. I just rolled some 5s. That's fun.
Or like if you get one hit with the multi-melta.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And so it reliably runs up and just drops mid-strength targets reliably, as I said. Also, it's very good if you can run it up see a character in a unit, so you know that when you shoot, they can't pull out of your line of sight. So you shoot, you pull half the unit, then if they twitch, you pull the rest of it on Overwatch. It is one of the single biggest beneficiaries of Overwatch, if not in the game.
I think it might be the biggest.
It might be the biggest beneficiary of Overwatch, because this vehicle has 1 CP shoot twice.
It really does.
And that strat is broken. One CP shoot twice is gross on a vehicle that legitimately just goes, you're dead. Just gone. Bye-bye. Get off my table.
Also, it's a transport that holds, what is it, 16 guys?
It holds 14
guys.
It holds 14 guys. It counts Gravis as 2. It counts Terminators as... I don't know. I don't put Terminators in there. It counts Terminators as 2 because otherwise you couldn't put 5 in there. It counts Terminators as 2. It counts Jump Pack as 2. It counts Gravis as 2. It counts everyone else as 1, I believe. I think there might be something.
3.
Yeah, Sensor 3. There's something that's 3.
Yeah.
So it also is a transport that is the most durable thing in Space Marines. You can put your dudes inside. So it's a natural fit with Eradicators or anything like that because it gets them up the table safely.
It also has assault ramps.
It also has assault ramps. Thank you, Quentin. It has assault ramps, which means if you drive up, you can drop the unit out after you move and charge, which is gross. And it's oftentimes, I don't even use that rule, but it still has it. And it's a really good one.
I think one of the most common Space Marine Gladius like total packages that we see together in the meta these days is 1 Land Raider Redeemer with an Apothecary Biologist with Fire Discipline and 6 Eradicators as like a solid unit that shoots infantry to death because it overwatches the Land Raider Redeemer, and then you blow any tank in the game up with the Eradicators inside.
Yep. And also you can get back inside. It's like a mobile fortress, basically. The Land Raider Redeemer, also for no reason I can determine, is also moves 12. Every other Land Raider moves 10. The Redeemer's just built different.
Has grenades too.
It has grenades. Dude, in one game at the World Championships, in one game, I killed the Avatar and the Incarn with the Redeemer's grenades.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's like the Incarn was left at like 3, and I was like, well, I have the Redeemer in the area, and the Redeemer doesn't want to shoot that thing. Dead. Avatar, late game. Well, it's at 2. Dead. Shoots some Aspect Warriors to death. It protects itself really well. One of the problems with overwatching with a unit is that if your opponent is really good and or really fast, what they'll do is they'll get very narrow line of sight to one model in the unit. So one model in the unit can overwatch. But a tank is a one model unit. If you gain line of sight to its tread with one dude, sorry, you're dying today. So like Warp Spiders are really good at killing like random units because they go 24. One dude sees me with line of sight. Do I care about that? No, I'm not going to take an overwatch from that, right? Like I just draw a line of sight to one guy in the unit. You're not going to overwatch with one dude. Cool. Flame you to death. If you try to do that with Warp Spiders against the Land Raider Redeemer, right?
They all
a couple
die.
Units of Warp Spiders move up to see the Land Raider. There is no line of sight you can split to where the Land Raider isn't roasting you on Overwatch.
It's very annoying.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has smoke. And smoke and Armor of Contempt is really hard to get around.
It's a very good unit.
It's so good.
It is a bit expensive.
Yeah, I had a friend put it to me like this, that the greatest lie the devil ever told was that a Land Raider Redeemer was too expensive at $285.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kyle.
Moving on to number 9 on the list, we have another Jack favorite. That's
right. Oh, man, I'm just going off over here. All right, the Caladius grav-tank is one of my favorite tanks in the game. It is... I would summarize it this way. It wins shootouts. Yep. That's what it does. It wins firefights. And its entire data sheet is built around that, and you pay a premium for it, but it does win firefights.
Yeah, if you're shooting down angles with your opponent, the Caladius is like the thing that you like just don't want to see down that angle.
Yep. It is toughness 11. It has a 2-up, 5-up with cover. Is not fun to try to punch through. Toughness 11, also massive breakpoint against a lot of things. I had it get shot by a lot of entropy cannons, and you know what happened? Very little.
Yeah.
And the 5-up invuln is also very nice. And it has 14 wounds, which is a lot. But then its main gun is also one of the best anti-tank guns in the entire game. Almost any army would take it. It is 4 shots, hitting on 2s, lethal hits against monsters and vehicles, twin-linked, Strength 12, AP 3, D6 plus 2 damage.
It's just really good.
It's really good at just punching big holes in tanks. It's what it does. It's very good at it.
Yeah, I think if you want to punch big holes in tanks from range, this might be the best tank at that in the game.
Yes, it will just win shootouts.
It doesn't do anything else, but it does that one job super well.
And if you take 2 of them, they can start to crack heavy infantry really well as well. Like, do you want to take 8 shots that hit on 2s and reroll wounds and wound on 2s and just kill like 3 or whatever 4 Deathwing Knights a turn? No, not really. I had people tell me a lot that like the Caladius version of the list was bad into the all infantry version of the list. And then 2 Caladius would park 18.1 inches away and just go 4 dudes dead, 4 dudes dead, 4 dudes dead, 3 dudes dead, 3 dudes dead, 4 dudes dead. And eventually their army would fall over.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't do that. So the Caladius, it just wins firefights. I love it for that. It's also OC4, which is huge. Like every number is 1 higher than it should be.
Yeah.
Like it feels like a tank that should be toughness 10 with a 3-up, 5-up, and 12 wounds. And then you look at it on the table, it's huge. And it's OC4 instead of 3. So it's toughness 11 instead of 10. It's got 2-up instead of a 3-up. And it's got 14 wounds instead of 12. And suddenly all of those breakpoints. And now it's like, oh my God.
You want to know what else is oh my God?
What?
Number 8 on this list.
That's right.
We have Canis Flex, the man himself. Technically, at the end of the day, a 435.3 wound infantry model.
That's, kind of. You do have to do a lot of work to get there.
Okay. So, like, before you get this 335-point infantry model, you're also kind of sort of maybe a little bit a toughness 12 vehicle with 22 wounds.
Yeah. He is 435, and he is expensive.
Yes.
But if you've seen anything, you've seen that Imperium armies are willing to take him.
Yeah, he's really good in knights. He's really good in everything else.
He's better in knights because he does get strats, first off, and he gets a 6-up feel no pain. But like, if you have an army that is flagging, that is not doing particularly well right now, that is having some issues, the best thing you can do if it's Imperium is just slap Canis Rex in there. Yep. Because he will bring your army up to this good, right? Like he will just, whatever pile you've assembled on your app or whatever, he will bring it this good. And that's because he just shoots really hard. He fights really hard.
He's really
tough
durable.
to kill.
Yeah.
He's just really good for stats. There's a reason why the Dreadknight list takes Canis. It's because he is Dreadknight 8 and 9 combined together.
I think we talked about the Caladius is the best single shooting tank in the game. The Canis Rex might be the best, like, just stat pile in the game.
That's all he is.
Yep.
He's just a pile of stats.
Yeah, he's just a pile of stats.
But he's a pile of stats you can bring in any Imperium army, and he's a very good pile of stats. Also, sustained 5s on every gun all the time and every melee attack all the time when he hits on 2s.
He's also damage 9 in combat.
Yeah, 9 or 8 or whatever.
I think he's 9.
I think he's 9. I think he's 5 attacks at like strength 1 billion, AP a lot, damage 9, with sustained 5s and hits on 2s. Or he's 10 attacks at 10 to 3, which is also really good slapping infantry around. He's got a free stratagem, which now actually works on everything, which is like a free tank shock, a free CP reroll, a free go to ground. No, can't do that.
Shoulder the burden?
Shoulder the burden if you're in knights. He walks through walls now.
That's really big.
Which is really good. He doesn't charge through walls, but he does walk through them. He's just a really good pile of stats at the end of the day.
Yeah. He's just really solid. Also, this is not like that important, but a lot of times when you kill him, you got Sir Hector, the little like moron guy who gets out, and you don't count as killing the unit until he dies.
Yeah, I mean, just like if you want to see how good he is, you just want to compare him to some of his like contemporaries.
Okay.
Like some of the really awful knights.
Okay.
Like the Cerastus Knight Lancer is just not even in the same ballpark. Like when you look at a list and you look at like, what do I get? I could get the Megara. I could get like the Lancer. I could get, you know, like a Paladin or something. You look at those and you compare those to Canis for a similar points total, and they are just not remotely the same. Canis hits harder, he shoots harder, he has better datasheet abilities, he functions better on his own. He's the complete package, whereas a lot of the knights are just not.
Yeah.
Not.
I think the last thing I'll say about Canis Rex before we move on is that like a lot of other knight lists flex to like different things, but everyone takes Canis Rex.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Everyone does.
Yep. All right, moving on to number 7, we have another really good unit, the Riptide battlesuit.
Yeah, Riptide is, again, an absurd pile of stats that just kind of doesn't, like, it just has too many things.
It, like, does everything too well.
A little bit too well. It's too durable.
It's, like, 14 wounds with a 2-up, 4-up.
Yeah, which at toughness 9.
Yep,
So
and in access to -1 damage in some attachments.
it does have access to -1 damage. It just having cover, having a 2-up, having a 4-up, when it's spammable, it's because people just take 3 of these.
Yeah.
And then they are really, really tough to remove when you've got guns pointing at you.
Yeah. So I think the Riptide is like the Exocrine, is one Riptide is not a very reliable shooting platform. You have the missile drones, which is like some autocannon shots. You have an SMS or a plasma or a fusion, which is like a pretty okay side gun. And then you have 6 shots at like strength 9, AP3 or 4, damage 4.
With AP3, I believe.
AP3.
I think it's strength 9, AP3, damage 4.
It's AP3, but
devastating
with
wounds.
easy access to ignore cover.
It's strength 8, sorry.
Strength 8.
So strength 8, AP3, damage 4, access to devastating wounds once. Access to ignores cover all the time because you're Tau, but you know, you can do that. The main what you're saying is like it's not offensively that great.
No.
But
it's not bad. It's like okay.
I have seen it one-tap tanks.
I have as well. It can be swingy. If you roll good on the hits and then you roll 3 6s, they just take 12 dev wounds.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I will say, and the reason we harped on its durability first, is it is absolutely miserable to play against.
Yes.
3 of these things is just never going to die. No. Like I just treat them as being immortal because the effort required to kill them is so wildly out of line with their points cost that I just can't. Right? You have a Tau army in front of you. You cannot dig these dudes out. And they're just going to shoot you and shoot you and shoot you. They ignore hit modifiers. They fall back and shoot with no penalty, no strat required. They just do that as part of their
They're quite
data sheet.
fast.
So you can't, killing them is too hard. It's just too hard. Tying them up is impossible.
You literally can't do it because they also fly. So you can't like wrap them. They just leave over you. Yeah.
So you just are getting shot by Riptide.
Yeah.
And that's just the end of the story, right? Yeah. There's no way to stop it other than dedicate massive amounts of resources to try to dig out this unit that has a 2-up in cover with a 4-up invuln. Yeah. And a 4-up invuln is so swingy with a ton of wounds. Because if you point like Dark Lances at it or something,
doesn't do anything.
It very well might not. And it's a very efficient CP reroll, keeps it alive. And if it's alive on 2, guess what? It ignores hit modifiers. So it doesn't care. One
other thing about it is its main gun, the range is quite good. So you can like poke it down at angles very well, like the Caladius.
This is the kind of data sheet that if you took 1 of it, you're not going to be that impressed.
No, but if you take 3.
You take 3 and it's bananas.
Yeah.
This thing I cannot believe was 165.
Yeah, I mean it was like way too cheap.
Yeah, I think it's 185 now, if I remember correctly. It's changed a lot. It might be one of the data sheets that's changed the most in terms of price because it was like 200 and something.
It was very
240, I think, when the edition came out.
It was like way too expensive. And
then it super expensive.
Did it go down almost 100 points?
It went down to 165, and that was the point where it was a crime.
Yes.
Like actually, you were just robbing someone. I don't know who you were robbing to include it in your list, but you cannot have. You're not going to tell me you bought that for 165, all right? You had to have threatened someone with a gun to let you put that in your army.
AdMech players at the time,
probably. Yeah. Yes. It's just too durable. It shoots just hard enough that you can't take it turn after turn. You can't shut it up. You can't make it stop shooting, and it takes too many resources to try to kill. It's the single thing that causes me the most aneurysms when I play into Tau.
Yeah, they're just very annoying.
Yeah.
All right. A recent arrival to this list, a unit that previously was not that good, but got a massive glow up in the most recent balance stat slate. We have number 6, the Skorpius Disintegrator.
Yeah. Just a really well-rounded tank, honestly. Yeah. It doesn't do any one thing that crazy.
Just does a lot of things really well.
It has too many guns.
It does.
It has so many guns, Quentin. Why does it have so many guns? Why is it 175? And it has the thing that takes it over the top, a 2-up armor save.
Yes.
Yeah, it's 2-up in cover at high toughness is legitimately hard to dig out.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the Riptide. It's the same thing with the Skorpius Disintegrator. And this thing, unlike the Riptide,
actually
will
slaps.
Just crack you.
Yeah.
So it has the Ferromite cannon. You can include the Belarus energy, whatever. You take the Ferromite. So the Ferromite is 3 shots at strength 12, AP 3, damage D6 plus, I want to say 1. And then is also +1 to hit against monsters and vehicles. And if you are in Protector Doctrine, the whole tank has heavy. The whole tank has +1 ballistic skill. So the Ferromite cannon is hitting on 2s all the time. And everything else is hitting on 2s if it remains stationary.
Yep.
So the Ferromite cannon, really good profile, +1 to hit, very, very solid. It also has the missiles, which are 3 shots, and this is all like long range. I believe it's all 36 or more. The missiles are 3 shots at strength 9, AP 2, damage D6. Okay, that's not that great. Twin linked.
Which helps a lot there.
Helps a lot there. So it'll hit on 2s if it stands still, 3s if it moves, and then it re-rolls its wounds with good, solid profiles.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you're like, wow, that is 6 solid anti-tank shots that hit on decent numbers and wound on decent numbers. And some of them re-roll to wound. You're like, wow, all right, well, that must be the end. It has 18 stubber shots. 18.
Yep. This is a good at shooting tank. I mean, like, we have hit the point that this thing doesn't always, but probably reliably kills something rhino-sized most times it shoots.
Yep. And it also wipes infantry squads.
Yeah.
Most time it shoots.
Most time it shoots.
Both at the same time.
Which is big. It also is a really good acceptor of the Cantic Thrall net, so that it's all of its guns can get like extra AP or ignore cover or something like that.
Yeah, extra AP if you are near battle line and assault. So let's run down the list of buffs this unit can get if you Cantic Thrall net it. It gets +1 ballistic skill, heavy, assault, +1 AP if you're near battle line, -1 to hit in combat if you're near battle line. I think that's all of them. +1 to hit on its main gun as well.
You can pay 1 CP +1 AP on its guns.
That is
pretty
really good.
Yeah. 2 CP.
2 CP +1 AP on its guns. Sorry, not familiar with the exact CP cost.
Yeah.
But just being +1 AP is enough. This thing shreds tanks.
Yep.
It shreds medium infantry because all the shots combined can shred them. And it shreds light infantry while also shooting at a tank.
It's also not that expensive.
Like if its main gun was like blast and it could shoot either tanks or infantry really well, that's one thing. But it'll shred light infantry while doming a tank across court. And it is only 175 for a 2-up armor save vehicle that has 12 wounds.
Yep.
And just hard to remove. This is another tank that's just really good in 3s.
Yep.
It's not that expensive. Very reliable shooting between all 3 of them. And it is quite tough to get through in multiples.
All right. Now we're going to take a brief little intermission for a word from our sponsor. All right, heading into number 5, we have another fairly new data sheet on the list. One that was, I think, probably the single biggest, or maybe the second single biggest beneficiary of the new Lord of Deceit rule.
Yeah, it's definitely either this or Fate Weaver. I'll tell you that for free. Bjorn the Fell-Handed was kind of mediocre before.
He was very okay.
He's very okay.
He was like a very budget Catan.
He's now very good. Very good. I forget his exact points cost. I think it's in the 180 ballpark. I think it might be exactly 180.
I'm pretty sure it is.
And his ranged output is not that credible. It's like a twin las cannon or a Hellfrost cannon or whatever.
It's okay.
His melee is also good.
Fine.
I think it's like True Claw is the name.
Yeah.
It's got lethal hits inherently. It's like 6 attacks at 12 -2, 3.
The -2 is the sad part.
-2 is the sad part. But like 180 for all that. All right, that's not that crazy. He does move 8, which is very nice. Which is very nice for a Dreadnought hull. But here's the main thing. He has 2 things we have not mentioned going for him.
Yes.
One is he is monstrously durable.
He is insanely durable.
Half damage with a 2-up, access to Armor of Contempt, and a 5-up, Feel No Pain. Those 8 wounds are going to go places.
He is basically a Catan with a 2-up armor save.
Yep. Fewer wounds, doesn't heal.
Does a fewer wounds, yep.
Unless you take a Tech Marine, which you won't do.
Yeah.
But fewer wounds, doesn't heal, 2-up save, cheaper.
A lot of the ways that a lot of armies
cheaper.
kill Catan is like, cool, I have 1,000,000 shots at like strength 6, AP 0, damage 1, take a bunch of 4-ups and die. Bjorn laughs those off.
Yes, he does not care about any of that. He is miserable to try to kill, which
So
is
annoying.
unfortunate
Yes.
considering his other rule is Lord of Deceit, which means any stratagem period costs 1 more if you use it within 12 inches of him.
Yeah, so he just like walks at you and you're like, man, he doesn't do that much damage. He's not that expensive. I don't really want to kill him. Oh, but he's in the center, so all my strats cost 1 more. That's really annoying.
Something about Lord of Deceit is that, and we might cover this in the top 10 monsters thing as well. We'll see. Something about Lord of Deceit is that it just breaks the fundamental economy of how the game functions.
Yeah.
The game was not designed with stratagems and the amount of CP you get to accommodate randomly having every strat cost 1 more.
Yeah.
It just was not. If you are under the effects of Lord of Deceit, you are not really using strats at all. Like it functionally just turns strats off for the most part.
Or you get like 1 and you pay out the nose for it.
Yeah, it's like maybe he extorts you, and you pay 2 CP for a grenade, but that just means you like aren't doing anything with the rest of your turn, and that's rough. And like every Lord of Deceit, bar this one and one other, are on like flimsy little 4 wound, 5 wound characters,
Yeah.
right? Maybe they have a save, maybe they have an invuln.
You can like kill them first, turn it off, then just proceed with your turn.
Yes. Not so with Bjorn. You just are under the effects of that aura, even if you are a high damage output army. Are you diverting like Angron to go pick up Bjorn? No? Well, you're not killing him.
Yeah.
Sorry. And also, Angron might not kill him. He should,
He
because
should,
Bjorn
there's a-
doesn't have an invuln.
There's a very real chance if you armor contempt, it gets a 5-up.
Yep.
There's a
You
very
just
real
roll a
chance it
little
just
good,
doesn't.
and you're
Yeah.
like, oops. But the thing is, again, if you labor under the aura of Bjorn the Fell-Handed for more than a battle round,
It is game breaking.
it's
really bad.
it's really bad.
Play the game without strats, why don't you?
Yeah, which is functionally what it feels like. You go into your turn with 3 CP, pick one CP strat you want to use this turn. Have fun with that. You can use a 2 CP strat if you want to go to 0.
Yes.
If this dude walks up on you, suddenly your interrupts turn off if you have 2 CP. Your Armor of Contempts cost you everything you want to do that turn.
Mm-hmm.
Your reactive moves cost you everything you want to do that turn.
Yep.
So suddenly you're just like losing out on a lot of strats. Something I've found happened is your opponent has 3 CP and has 3 strats they want to use. Guess what? You pick one, that's what you get, and then you get upset.
Yeah, it's like, because if everything costs 2 and you have 3 CP, we have an odd number of strats. So you have 1 CP that you can't ever use, and then 1 strat that's like 2 CP. It's not worth 2 CP probably.
Nope. And I will tell you, in a melee matchup, if you just have Bjorn in the center of the action for more than a turn or 2, the game is over.
Yeah.
Because stratagems are the backbone of how people play the game, and they were not designed to accommodate Lord of Deceit. You get 1 a turn. You get a second one if you decide you don't want to score some amount of secondary points. That is your allotment. You get 1 strat a battle round, 2 if... No, you don't get 2. You do not get 2 a battle round. You get 1, and you might bank a CP for a following turn.
Yeah.
Maybe. It is brutal. Trying to kill Bjorn with like grenades and stuff is literal highway robbery.
Yeah.
It's just the worst.
All right, moving on to number 4.
One last thing I will say about Bjorn. He is also really good in the Space Wolf detachment because he is a character.
Yes.
So he can turn on the survived at half strength thing because he is not going to die in 1 hit. And he can also turn on the kill a vehicle or monster in combat. He can turn on kill a character. He can turn on take your opponent's home objective if you like advance and charge him and go do stuff. He's really good synergy there as well.
Yep. All right. Moving on to number 4, we have the Sisters of Battle Immolator. So we talked about this one. Originally, we were going to just kind of lump it in with the dedicated transports. But then we talked about it and we realized that the Immolator is just kind of a cut above all those dedicated transports, so much so that it is on number 4 on our list.
Absolutely. No, Immolator it's more, this whole list is a vibe check, right?
Yeah, it's a vibe check.
It's a vibe check. Like, this doesn't feel like a dedicated transport.
No, it feels like a main battle tank.
Yep, which it kind of is.
Kind
Why
of
don't
is.
you go through what it does
So
for because you've been playing it a lot lately.
Yeah, so there are 3 things that separate this thing from other dedicated transports. It's 115 points, so it is very cheap. It is toughness 10 with 11 wounds, which is a major bump up from things like rhinos. It also has a 6-up invuln save with access to miracle dice, which means it is shockingly more durable than most other dedicated transports in its weight class.
Yeah, if I fire meltaguns at it, I wound it twice. Like, I might reasonably expect that is a tank dead most times.
Yeah.
The 6-up invul means you take one of them, maybe. Then you auto pass the other one. You're like, cool, I'm alive.
Yeah. It's also toughness 10, so like your melt is wounded on 5s instead of 4s. It's a huge deal. And then in terms of shooting, you get a heavy bolter, a twin multi-melta, and a hunter killer missile, which in Sisters is better than every other hunter killer missile. And that is the point that it is a real shooting unit that can just kill a tank in shooting.
Yep. But don't worry, it has rules.
So it holds 6 Sisters of Battles models, and it also combat squads them, which means Dominions, which are otherwise kind of a clunky unit, become incredible because you get 2 squads for the price of 1. Thank you, Immolator. Additionally, if it hits you with any of its guns, so you fire the multi-melta at a tank and the heavy bolter at a different tank, your whole army ignores covers against it.
Yep, you only pick one of those 2, but what you do is you fire the multi-melta at the thing you're going to kill with meltas,
yep.
And you fire the heavy bolter at the thing you want to kill with a different
tank on this list.
Tank we'll cover later.
Yeah. It turns the army on. It's very cheap. In Firestorm, it moves ridiculously fast. It has incredible stratagem synergy. Because if you shoot the tank, the girls inside can get out and shoot you back. You can move, advance it, then kick the girls out, so they can go 21 inches, then get the girls out, then shoot you.
This is a combination we will talk about in a bit.
Yeah.
But watch last week's video.
We talked about the Triumph a lot.
We talked about the Triumph a lot.
Also, it's probably like 20 or 30 points too cheap.
Yep, and that's coming from somebody who's played 2 tournaments with them so far.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yep.
They're just really good.
Turns out a twin multi-melta, you can just make damage 8 and also can advance and shoot and also can flat advance 6 because miracle dice and also can go 21 inches and then shoot aforementioned multi-melta that then becomes strength 10 and is twin linked and can make the first failed save damage 8. Turns out that's good. Also, it has 2 relevant rules. 2, combat squatting and the ignores cover for the whole army.
Yeah,
what is that?
It's really good. It's a shooting piece. It's a buff piece. It's really durable. It's a dedicated transport. Like, it's just really way too good.
Yes. It just is. That's. I mean, there's not much more to say about it. Why is it 115?
It should be like 135.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that strength 9 to 10 on a multi-melta, especially a twin multi-melta.
I think 9 to 10 might be the or 5 to 6, but probably 9 to 10 is the single biggest breakpoint in the entire game.
Yeah, and it's not like particularly close. It changes the breakpoints of how you deal with like almost every relevant tank. 5,
9, and 10 all get +1 to wound there, and those are all incredibly common toughness brackets.
Yep. And it rerolls to wound, which means you rock up to a vehicle and you oftentimes just
kill it.
2 saves and kill it. And it's also AP4, so they don't get a save against it, and the thing moves hellaciously quickly.
Also, I cannot stress this enough, the Hunter Killer Missile is really good because you have 6 of them and they go to AP4 ignore cover.
Yep, and this is half of why you get to AP4 ignore cover.
Yep.
Because this makes them ignores cover. And the army, the fact you don't have to fire the multi-melta to trigger ignores cover is massive.
Yes.
So otherwise, it would be you shoot at a target, you kill it, and then you get ignores cover against it. And you're like, well, that's pointless.
Mm-hmm.
They're dead. I don't need ignores cover against them. I suppose I'm happy they're dead. But because you can fire the heavy bolter at one thing, and does it have a storm bolter?
No, it doesn't, unfortunately.
No. So you fire the heavy bolter at one thing, and you fire the multi-melta at another. So the multi-meltas and everything pick up one tank, and then you go ignores cover on this other one, and then the rest of your army becomes really good at killing them too.
This is also like nothing, but the heavy bolter is a 36-inch range, which means it's quite like long band range. So you can have it like on one side of the field supporting the other flank really efficiently.
That is actually a huge deal. Mm-hmm. You can also peek it around a terrain feature and go, bink, you don't have cover anymore at long range.
Yeah.
Which is pretty huge.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty huge.
Yep. All right, moving on to another datasheet that is very, very good that recently got a big glow up, but I think the previous balanced data slate.
Yep.
We have number 3 on this list, the Nemesis Dreadknight.
Yep, and there is a Grandmaster Nemesis Dreadknight, which is a decent unit, but the Nemesis Dreadknight datasheet itself, the non-character variation, is the better one because it advances, falls back, shoots, and charges, and oh my god, is that a suite of rules.
Yeah, I mean, basically, this thing moves 14 inches.
Yep, because it flat advances 6 due to the Grey Knight Army rule, or detachment rule, technically. Yeah. It's a tank that is, you know how there are tanks that get better in 2s and there's tanks that get better in 3s? This is a tank that gets better in 6s.
Yes.
Because its guns are not that reliable.
They're pretty good, though.
They're good. They're good, They're a good shooting piece. They are a good shooting piece. But I have seen dreadknights shoot and do no damage, and I've seen dreadknights shoot and dome a tank.
Yeah.
And I've seen both of those things happen, and they both felt like you shoot one of these things and you roll a die and you find out, oh, I rolled, a 5, you're dead. I rolled a 6, you're dead. I rolled a 1, nothing happened.
Yeah, so
right?
they
It almost feels like they roll on a chart rather than actually shooting your opponent.
they have 6 shots from one gun at, 10, 2, 3 ignore cover.
That is correct.
Yep.
24 inch range,
24 inch
which
range.
is important.
And then the other gun can either be like a 12-shot Gatling gun or a 2d6 shot, really good, like heavy flamer.
It's probably the heavy flamer. It's the heavy incinerator.
Mm-hmm.
It is 2d6 shots, 18 inch range, crucially, which is huge. They're an Overwatch threat too, at 611. Not psychic, weirdly enough. Incinerators are not psychic weapons. So against things that have protection against psychic weapons, no, you don't. You're not against that.
And then its melee is like respectable.
So its melee is pretty good. It's 5 attacks at 14 minus 3 d6 plus 1. And the glow up that it got, because it was trash garbage when the index came out, the glow up that it got is it actually did damage. Its main gun was, instead of 10-2-3 ignores cover, it was 10-1-3 not ignores cover. Plus 2 AP, shockingly enough, does make a difference. It was plus 1, and then everyone is cover nowadays. So plus 2. And then its melee went from hitting on 4s to hitting on 3s. If this thing advances, it can shoot and charge, and you can spend 1 CP to give it plus 1 to hit in both shooting and combat, which is a big deal. Suddenly it's hitting on 2s. You can take Tech Marine to dink a guy and make them hit on 2s. You can make this more reliable, but the main thing is 6 shots coming down range at 10 minus 2, 3 ignores cover. Not that scary.
Not really.
36 shots coming down range.
Take 6 of these things.
Take 6 of these things. It is really nasty. But the main part that makes it really scary is that you cannot get away from them.
No, not at all.
If they start to crack you, you cannot escape. They teleport. They move 14. They will find you. And they will kill you.
If you have like a cheap squad hiding behind a ruin that can teleport 3 inches away and then shoot you to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sword is quite bad. Mm-hmm. It is, instead of hitting on 3s at high strength and good damage, it is like 5 attacks that hit on 2s at like 10 minus 2 d6, if I remember correctly.
That's not
it's
great.
Like not good.
Yeah.
Might be 6 attacks. It's just not that great. But basically, these things get better in multiples. They're also quite durable. You have access to Armor Contempt. They have a 2-up. They have 13 wounds. They have a 4-up invuln.
13 wounds is such an obnoxious amount of wounds because absolutely nothing goes neatly into 13.
Yeah, it has to be something like d6 plus 1. You get 2 through.
Maybe.
D6 plus 2, sorry.
Yeah, D6 plus 2 would probably do it.
Then you still have to get a 9. Like, nothing's that great. You have to
No.
get 3 D6 plus 2 weapons through before you can expect to kill it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to hand it 6 wounds, so you have to like...
CP reroll.
Yeah, it's like not
If it's
great.
AP3, which most anti-tank shooting is AP3, they get a 3-up if they Armor of Contempt.
Yeah, it's like not great.
It's not great.
It's not great.
Killing them quickly is tough.
Yes.
And they teleport around the board. And the Grandmasters teleport, and the regular Dreadknights just move 14, and you cannot get away from them.
Nope.
And they will just keep firing shots at you until you eventually fall over.
One big thing also is that they will always hit you first.
Yes.
You will never, ever get the drop on these guys.
No, not if their player is any good, which I have definitely seen people like talking about their stats and being like, oh, in a straight fight, it's not that great. Well, if they hit you first and they peel like 2 hammerheads, then maybe you don't win the firefight into them. You know what I'm saying? Like, because then you have to peel them up, and then there's maybe Canis behind it, but who knows? That's a Canis problem. And then, all 3 of them advance up, shoot, and charge all at the same time. And it's like, oh my God, that's nasty. Mm-hmm. Also, they have 3-inch deep strike. So if you're trying to keep a little nonsense alive, boop, they're dead.
Yep.
So they threaten your home objective really well. They have Mists of Deimos.
Which, that's so annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Into a rapid ingress, into a walk up and punch your face in, which is really gnarly. Now, they did take a serious hit with points increases, not a big deal, tank shock.
Yes.
They used to roll a 16 die tank shock. Now they roll an 8 die tank shock.
That is very different.
It's very different. So when they want to put the damage together, they do a lot less of it in the charge phase specifically. I think they will be okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, heading into number 2, I think is Richard's favorite model. Yeah, he's giving us a thumbs up over here. We have the Silent King, who this was our he feels more like a vehicle vibe check.
Yeah, he's a big dude. He doesn't lead. He's a vehicle.
Yeah. So what does the Silent King do? Well, so he himself is 16 wounds. Stop me if I'm wrong. Toughness 10, 2 up, 4 up.
Yep, that sounds right.
And then he's got 2 little floating buddies with him, the Triarchal Menhirs, that are each 5 wounds of the same. So what this means is he's like 20-something wounds at high toughness, good armor save, 4 up invuln, with like really awkward like breakpoints because you have to kill 2 5-wound models before you can even begin to touch the main Sarah's body himself.
Yep, and he heals, so he can reanimate those.
Yep. If you're playing Awakened Dynasty and you kill one of the Menhirs, you can spend the strat to get the Menhir back because the guy died.
It's really silly.
Yeah.
No, I agree. It's so he's very tough.
Yes,
he's incredibly tough actually because he is 26 wounds in awkward breakpoints with an invuln with an armor save that's really good in cover. He's really annoying to try to kill. For my money, he's like more annoying to kill than Catan because Catan are usually jamming their way into your army, whereas the Silent King likes to hover in midboard and reaching out to kill him is miserable.
It's so annoying.
Yeah,
because it's not like you have to like. It's like, oh, I can cut an angle to shoot the Silent King. Okay, well, cool. I'm gonna need 12 tanks to do it.
Yeah. And it's not like he's not doing anything. So the Menhirs have the beams, the annihilation beams or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
They shoot crazy hard. Their strength a lot, AP 4, damage 6.
Yeah.
So if you're a tank, you're just taking 2 hefty anti-tank shots a turn.
Yep.
And they hit on 2s, and maybe there's an aura in there. We'll talk about that in a second. So they're really nasty.
Yes.
He also has an indirect gun that definitely got hit recently with the indirect changes. But it's still 12 shots, I believe. It's 611, 511, something like that. 611, yeah. Richard's over there just nodding his head along with this. He also has 2 shots. It's strength decent, AP decent, damage 3, dev wounds, which adds up. And then in combat, he's 12 attacks. It's strength 8, AP 3, damage 2, lethal hits.
Yep, that's a real combat profile.
That is a very real combat profile. He'll walk into units and walk out the other side for sure. And that's usually after he's poked giant holes in a tank and then walked up and cleaned your clock.
Yeah.
So he does damage as well, but the main reason that puts him over the top are his buffs.
His buffs, which are really, really good.
He either chooses I'm sure there's a third one in there somewhere, probably. I couldn't be bothered to check. I think it's like reroll leadership checks and battle shock checks or something. Whatever. It does not matter to me. Yeah. +1 strength and reroll charges.
Cool.
Yeah, sure. The other ones are substantially better. It is ignore any enemy modifiers.
Which is really, really good.
It's insane. Almost every defensive ability is a modifier of some kind. Would Deathwing Knights like to be -1 damage and armor of contempt?
No.
Sorry, you're actually
just
none of those things.
Yeah. Catan, please die.
Catan, no half damage. Avatar of Cain, no half damage.
No blanking failed saves on like Magnus.
No, you can't do it. Sorry, you can't change my damage characteristic to 0. You can't change any of my characteristics. So that one aura is enough by himself, but it's not the only one. He has one that is probably on balance slightly better, and because you get to pick between the two, it is really gross.
Totally just pick between the two. Yeah.
It is reroll 1s to hit and wound in a 6-inch aura.
That's very good.
Which is dumb.
Yeah.
It's just dumb. It's just
really dumb.
So reroll 1s to hit and wound is such a force multiplier. It's actually crazy. He rerolls 1s to hit on his hitting on 2s, and he rerolls 1s to wound on his wounding on 3s. And then it applies to any unit nearby him. So if you are playing something like teleporting Doomsday Arcs, guess what? They reroll hits and wound. They roll 1s to hit and wound, or they ignore modifiers. They also, like if you're running any teleporting stuff, he can teleport along with them or coming off the board edge or whatever.
Yeah, you can cosmic precision this guy.
Yeah.
It's super annoying.
Yeah, it's really good. You can also just wander him up board, give the Nightbringer reroll 1s to hit and wound, which he certainly does not need, but definitely appreciates. You can give Heavy Destroyers this buff.
They like
you can
that.
give Skorpex this buff, so they reroll 1s to
I mean, even like
wound.
Warriors and Immortals don't hate it.
No, even Warriors and Immortals don't hate it. There's no unit that does not want reroll 1s to hit and wound. For sure. I mean, I'm sure Richard could give me an exhaustive list of all the units that go from, oh, yeah, they're pretty decent to, wow, I just lost 4 tanks in a turn.
Doomstalkers?
Doomstalkers, rerolling 1s to wound. They love that. And they also love not being like -1 to hit, -1 to wound, half damage, -1 damage, armor of contempt. No, you're just dead is what you are.
Yep.
Which is very strong. And then there's also a 6-inch +1 leadership aura.
That's not irrelevant.
Yeah, it definitely shouldn't just be an afterthought, but it
Kind of is. He's just really good. And also, I cannot stress this enough. He is so difficult to kill.
Let's go back to the old Adam Camilleri classification scheme.
Oh, yeah.
Is this man a buffer, a beater, or a fridge?
He really is all 3.
He's all
He's
three.
all 3.
And he's very good at all 3.
Yeah.
Buffer, he buffs the army. Beater, he beats your opponent up.
Yep.
And fridge, he is goddamn tanky.
Yes.
He's just incredibly tanky. Why am I supposed to try to reach out to kill this dude?
Yeah.
What is this? This is not fair. Okay? I shouldn't have to deal with this. I've been special. I've been a good boy. I shouldn't have to deal with the Silent King.
I think all Necrons should get to play with 1,500 points, and they should get to take the Silent King, and he gets to sit on the shelf and look pretty.
Yeah, he looks very good too.
Yeah,
he's
he does
very
too.
nice. He's got a little Catan boy up top.
All right, but he's not
also
even
410, so
which
he's
is
not
great,
500 points.
No.
Yeah, no, I've been a good boy. And 420, sorry, he blazes it all up and down the board. I've been good. I should not have to deal with this guy. I think that's fair. I think we can all get on board with that.
Okay, so how about I'm going to make you trade. You don't have to deal with number 2 on the list, but you do have to deal with number 1 on the list. The best tank in the entire game, in our opinion, the Castigator.
I've made a huge mistake.
You have made a huge mistake. So, what does the Castigator do, you may ask? Well, it is a humble battle tank that just shoots you. Okay, so it's 150 points, so this thing is very cheap. Once again, it is toughness 10, 11 wounds, with a 6-up invuln, so it is quite durable. It has access to armor of contempt. It has access to smoke, so it's really not easy to kill. And then in terms of shooting, you have 3 heavy bolters, and either a Castigator autocannon or the Castigator battle cannon. I personally think the autocannon is a little bit better. The autogun is 4 shots at strength 9, AP 1, damage 3. Not that bad. It's also rapid fire 4 with a 48-inch range, so it's actually 8 shots, and it's twin linked. It's pretty good there.
That's a lot of shots.
That's a lot of shots.
With twin linked.
Yeah. Then, if it hits you with any of its guns, and it's got those guns, a Hunter Killer Missile, and relevantly, a Stormbolter, your whole army gets...
We'll explain why the Stormbolter matters a lot in a second.
Your whole army gets +1 AP against that target in shooting. But all of its guns are AP 1, so they go to AP 2. And then we talked about earlier, we have that Immolator in our army, so we're going to ignore cover. And then all of these guns are AP 1, ignore cover. And let's say we're in Firestorm, because we're actually in Firestorm, because that we're going to play Sisters. Then we go to Strength 6, AP 2, damage 2 on those heavy bolters. And we go to Strength 10, AP 2, damage 3, ignore cover, twin linked on that main gun.
It's not the first one that gets you.
No, it's number 2 and 3.
So the way it works is you layer your buffs throughout your shooting phase because you have 3 Immolators and you have 3 Castigators.
Yes.
So 3 enemy targets will be +1 AP against them, and 3 enemy targets will have ignores cover thrown on them.
Yeah.
So an Immolator and a bunch of melta guns or whatever domes a tank and fires a heavy bolter at some target somewhere. And a Castigator sneaks up on it and fires all of its guns at that target and rinses it.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they fire the Stormbolter that they have at something else. They don't have to even give up a heavy bolter.
No,
why?
Just a Stormbolter.
They fire the Stormbolter at something else, and then that thing gets +1 AP against it. Another Immolator domes a different target with multi-meltas and fires its heavy bolter at that target that got shot by the Stormbolter. Suddenly, the other 2 Castigators just absolutely lift that thing into the sun and then fire their Stormbolters at 2 other targets. And suddenly, you're just, what are we even doing here? Quentin, I watched you delete 10 Plague Marines with some hand flamers because they went to strength 5, AP 1, damage 1 with +1 shot and devastating wounds. And a significant part of that was the fact that they were extra AP because a Stormbolter plinked the armor of a dude. And he's like, what is that? And he's dead, is what he is.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a game from a tournament I had. So I was playing into Blood Angels, a really solid Blood Angel. He had a Land Raider Redeemer. And he was like, well, I think I'm going to try and rush at you. And I was like, okay. And he thought for a while in deployment, and he pre-measured very carefully, and he put the Land Raider down.
There was not very many places he could have hidden this Land Raider. I was one table away.
Yes. So the Land Raider was on the line. He was like, I'm just going to try and like rush at you. I don't think you can kill this Land Raider. And his thought was, he was like, the Volgons are going to be the one thing in your army that can kill a Land Raider. Because I explained what everything did, and I explained all the stats of my units. And he was like, okay, if you get up to shoot me with the Volgons, then I'm going to be in range with like some death company, and I'm going to kill the Volgons back. And I was like, okay, cool. So I just put all of my Castigators like exactly at 24. So I got the extra stuff, and I just shot this Land Raider to death with 2 Castigators.
And I think
an
a heavy
Immolator.
bolter off an Immolator.
Off an Immolator, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty gross.
Yeah.
That's pretty gross. Well, it's also, as you pointed out to me, this and the Immolator together makes 6 Hunter Killer missiles that are AP4, ignores cover, flat 6 damage.
Yes.
That's a bananas volley to just lob at your opponent. Like, all right, first things first, we're going to throw 600 Killer missiles that are all going to be damage 6.
Not actually, but like...
They're not all damage 6, but they're all damage whatever you need it to be. If you have 4 wounds left, they're damage 4.
Yep.
One of them is going to be damage 6. If it's turn 2,
Two
two
or three
of them are going to be damage 6.
yeah.
That feels a little more reasonable.
Yeah.
And they're going to be AP4, ignores cover.
Yeah. They're just quite solid. They just do everything. They're really cheap. The last big thing about them is that the Castigator moves 10 base, which is like fine, but it advances and shoots in Firestorm, and you can auto 6 this advance, or like auto 5 or 4 or whatever. And then it gets +2 move, +1 advance. So it really moves 13 plus an advance. So if you really need to, it goes 19, but really it moves like 16, and they're just really fast.
Yeah, the thing is, you're going to have 3 Immolators and 3 Castigators, and they're all going to move way too fast. Like they move faster than a Ravager by a significant amount, and that is gross and stupid. Because they are actually very durable, and their long-range firepower is significant, and they buff each other and the rest of the army.
Yeah, +1 AP is like a real buff. Like what's the guard tank? The Leman Russ Exterminator, I think?
The Leman Russ, I think it's the Exterminator gets the +1 AP, Executioner is the Plasma. They have a lot of Leman Russes that sound the same.
Yeah, which has the same buff, but the Castigator is just like a wildly better version of that tank.
Yep, it's less durable, but it's so much faster.
It's also not that much less durable.
No, it's not that much less
durable. It's really not that much less durable.
Fate dice or Miracle dice on defense are really nasty because you just blank a fail. It's almost like a Rogel Dorn, right? You allocate a save to it, and you're like, well, all right, first one doesn't matter. We're just blanking that. So the other thing to consider is the Castigator is the single best beneficiary of the Triumph buff ever, because the +2 move is really good. But a lot of times, because I talk extensively about the Triumph in the last video we did. Also, Nick probably has a bunch of videos on it in the War Room if you want to check it out. But the Castigator really likes +2 move, likes that. Really likes the feel no pain, so it's effectively like 13 or 14 wounds. We talked about how 13 wounds is like a super awkward breakpoint on dreadknights. Well, you can just give that to a Castigator. Yep. If it has a 6-up, it basically does. Basically, if mathematically, it just has 13 wounds. It really likes real ones to wound and shooting. And because all the heavy bolters, and like that. The Hunter Killer. And the Hunter Killer missile. And then it really, really likes the 2 Miracle dice. Because what you can do is especially if you're going second, you can be like, okay, I'm going to do +2 move, reroll 1s, and jam all the tanks forward, shoot. It's a new battle round, Triumph's buff switches. I'm in the open, and I go 6-up Feel No Pain, and 2 Miracle Dice army-wide. And then they're like, okay, so I'm going to pop out, and I'm going to hand you 2 Mouthless Saves on the Castigator. I'm like, cool, both pass. Back to you. Yep. Yeah. So it's not actually, in context, it is harder to remove than a lot of tanks. Yes. It is shockingly more durable than people expect. Right, because if you just look at its data sheet, you're like, okay, this is a good tank. Yeah. In context, it is a stupid tank. Yeah. It is 150 also. And I think someone best put it in chat. It's like if you combined the best parts of a Ravager with a Leman Russ Exterminator with a Ridge Runner and also gave it a better gun than all 3 of those. Yeah, I know. It's just insane. It moves faster than a Ravager. Yeah. It has better buff. It has the same buff as an Exterminator. Mm-hmm. It shoots harder than an Exterminator. And it also moves 19 inches. What are we doing? Yeah. What are we doing here? So the other big thing, this is kind of important, is that its range is quite long. And so what that means is you can sit on your back board edge
and shoot at people outside of their effective threat range. And you're fast enough that you can kind of like, what's it, Pong, where you can kind of go up and down, hit the ball.
Yeah.
You do that with the Castigator on the backboard edge, where you just cut whatever angle you need. And then on like turn 2 or 3, you can go from your backboard edge to like midfield in one turn. And then you're like, boom.
Yeah, when the army pulls the switch and goes aggressive, there's no getting away from it.
Yeah. So typically what happens when I play Sisters is turn 1 and 2, you get peppered by 3 Castigators, and you're like, wow, that stung like way more than it should have. I lost like real units to these like funny battle tanks in the back. And then I'm like, turn 3, all right, it's time for you to die. And then everything just advances directly at you and you get crippled.
Yep, I've seen it happen multiple times. I've seen it happen to good players.
Yep.
It is just nasty because like, what are you going to do? Try and reach into the army that has Volgons and the Super Flamer Seraphim and Immolators with the Dominions in them and 3 Castigators. You're going to reach into that army to try and pull these things out. What are you going to do? You're going to poke out your whole army to shoot it?
Yep.
Because if you don't and you poke out enough saves to kill it, they'll pass 2 of them and then live.
Yeah.
And then shoot you.
One thing we split a lot on the list is like 1 Riptide's not that reliable. 1 Castigator is a reliable shooting piece. And 3 is way better.
Yep.
Yep.
It's just a vehicle you want 3 of.
Yeah.
Because they stack buffs with each other, with the Immolators, with the rest of the army. And as you said, like, this is not 600 kill. This ain't Yo Mama's 600 killer missiles or whatever. This is 600 killer missiles that are damage whatever they need to be.
Yep.
Right? You can say they're all damage 6. They're not actually all damage 6. They're whatever damage kills you.
Yeah.
Which is, nice. And then they're also AP4 ignores cover. So you don't get a save.
Yeah.
And they hit on 2s and they win on 3s, reroll 1s a decent amount of the time. And they just don't get a save. And you're like, well, we're going to start by doing 6 damage with a Hunter Killer. And then we're going to shoot you with the main gun. And you do it in reverse order, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I only need to do 3 damage with a Hunter Killer. Bye, dead.
Yep.
And you shoot him with the main gun after triggering ignores cover off an Immolator. And then you fire the Stormbolter at something else. And I've gone down the chain of like how your opponent's whole army goes to sleep. But that is how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like they're just too good. I think the Castigator probably needs to have like either its rule needs to change to something else. Like if the rule was like if you shoot the main gun at the target, you get +1 AP, that wouldn't be quite as oppressive as the Stormbolter. Or like honestly, it just needs to go up like 35, 40 points.
Yeah, it and the Immolator have the issue of they kill a thing while buffing the rest of your army against something else.
Yeah.
And that is really, really
okay,
strong.
so like real talk, Jack.
Yes. Quentin, I love real talk.
Okay.
Real talk with Q and J.
The Skorpius Disintegrator.
Yes.
Really, really good tank. So on this list. Would you rather have that or a Castigator?
Castigator.
The Castigator, right? The Castigator's like, what is it, 25 points cheaper?
It's 25 points cheaper. It moves infinitely faster. Yep. And it also buffs your army into things. Like, it really is not the first Castigator that kills you.
No, it's the second.
It's the second and the third.
Yeah.
And then your army's dead. Like 2 Castigators will just get line of sight to the Skorpius and it just will die. And it's also not inconceivable that you fire a heavy bolter off of an Immolator, you shoot a Castigator at that Skorpius, and the Skorpius is just dead. Oops, sorry, unlucky, you're dead. You failed 2 saves against the main gun and you failed to save against the Hunter Killer Missile. You're gone. Bye-bye. Sorry, unlucky.
Super reasonable. Also, the Castigator is like fairly durable to return fire. Because like you just be like, you handed me 2 saves in the main gun. Well, I'm gonna pass one of these. Then you did 5 damage. Well, I have some Feeling the Pains, which took 3.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, large damage shots typically don't overkill the target. They get to they get the number of shots through that they need, and then the target is dead, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
3d6 plus 3 or whatever off of d6 plus 1 guns, that kills the target. Cool. Well, if you just make sure one of those don't happen, you're good. And then you live on like 4 or whatever, and you continue to spray them down.
Yes.
And it really just is like, okay, well, Immolator ignores cover, and then this Castigator picks up that Disintegrator and buffs the other one, which then gets ignore cover, and then that picks up another Disintegrator, and you continue the chain and pick up a 3rd Disintegrator with a 3rd Castigator, and you're like, we're cooking with gas today, boys.
We are. All right. Well, you know what's even better than the Castigator?
What is even better than the Castigator?
Nothing, no vehicles, because it's the best vehicle game. But these super chats we have that we're now going to talk about.
That's true.
So Danny L. as a $2 super chat. 6 Nors with auto explode from Crusher Go Go.
You're so close.
So close.
So close with their monsters, man.
Maybe next week we can talk about the Norn.
We're going to get Norny in here.
Some Norn ASMR.
Yeah, we're going to have some hot Norn action.
All right. Ryan G with the $5 super chat. How much did Quinton have to pay Jack to get the Skorpius disintegrator on the list? That was a mutual choice.
Yep, I think we both high-fived over this choice.
Yeah, we both really think it's a great, really solid, good tank.
Honestly, Quinton's the one who's been shot by a Skorpius disintegrator the most recent. No, I played against it this weekend.
I got shot by one last night.
All right, never mind.
Yeah.
You win that one.
Yes. Iowa Chris, Monster... can you... I want to say the... Whatever. Thanks, Kyle.
It's definitely Kyle.
It's definitely Kyle. Okay.
Yeah.
Iowa
Chris,
Monster, and America's Baldest Man.
Maybe it is Chris Adams.
Maybe it might
I don't
be Chris.
know.
Who knows? As a monster... okay. As a monster, I object to the lack of monsters on this list. Also, as a matter of record, I, Chris, enjoy slapping sweaty man buns.
Is that so? Well, it's a bit odd you decided to mention it in super chat form, but I am here to support you, buddy. I'm here to support you in all the tough times that are about to follow.
Yep. Mr. Morgan with the $5 super chat. Question number 1. What Ultramarines Gladius unit / tank counters Space Wolf's cavalry well? Same question, but versus Imperial Guard. Thank you kindly.
Tank, probably both of those you want a Vindicator.
Yeah.
Because it wounds Imperial Guard tanks on 3s and forces a bunch of saves. That's quite good. And then against Space Wolf Cavalry, it'll give you Blast. It'll give you a lot of shots to try and force through their invuln. It'll wound them on 3s if they -1 to wound. You have Oath to get around the hit problems.
Is the Rogel Dorn's like oppressor cannon damage 4?
No, it's damage 3.
Does the Rogel Dorn have an option for damage 4?
No, there is a twin battle cannon or an oppressor cannon. The oppressor cannon is D6 + 3 at 12 -2, 3. And then the cannon off the front is D6 shots at, I want to say 9, 3, 3.
Okay. So I'm actually going to throw out a kind of weird suggestion for both of these. So, Thunderwolf Cavalry really don't like getting charged. So I think Bulgrin are actually really solid.
So he's playing, he's playing the Ultramarines. He's versing Space Wolf Cavalry.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah. Well, sorry, I misread. I think for Guard, the Eradicator brick with Apothecary Biologus, I think is really good into Guard.
The Eradicator brick is the last thing. I was talking about tanks specifically. The Eradicator brick is the last thing an Imperial Guard unit wants to see. Yeah. And it likely will be the last thing that they see.
Yes.
Because it just pops out and just completely domes a tank. And then on Overwatch, can dome a second tank.
Yeah.
And then if they move close to it, i.e. want to get on any of the objectives, you get back in a Land Raider.
Yeah.
Which is nasty. Very nasty. It's also good into the Space Wolf Cavalry because you can reroll to hit and you just hand them a bunch of pass or die saves. Mm-hmm. It's quite good. It requires Oath in that scenario, but it's quite good at that. If you haven't tried that, you definitely want to. And the thing that counters Space Wolf Cavalry in the Stormlance especially is melee. Because they can't -1 to hit and they can't -1 to wound in melee. So
also,
you want anything that does a lot of damage in combat, which probably for Ultramarines is some unit plus Calgar.
I think Calgar plus aggressors isn't terrible.
It's not. Calgar plus Blade Guard is also not
pretty
bad
solid,
with Lance and reroll to hit.
Thunderwolf Cavalry also have very low AP.
They do. So
armor contempt. 2 up save, armor contempt means they don't actually do any damage.
Yes.
So Land Raider Redeemer will not kill Thunderwolf Cavalry that quickly, but if you just keep shooting them all the time, every turn, they're never going to kill you back.
Yep, and it's good on Overwatch because they can't -1 to wound.
Overwatch, yeah.
It evenly multiplies into their 4 wounds, and they can't -1 to wound on Overwatch.
Yes.
So you'll pick off like 2 guys on Overwatch and 2 guys on shooting, and oh, look at that, your squad's dead.
Yep.
What you want to make sure you don't do is just tee yourself up for the worst blood surge of all time, right? Just when they have a blood surge, that's the move D6 once a game when you shoot them, if they have a Wolf Guard battle leader in the unit. If they have that, just stay 7.1 inches away, so you can't get engaged. They can only do it once. Light them up. Mm-hmm. Just pick one unit, light them up. Scouts are also really good into these units because you can be in a midfield ruin, and as soon as they move up, you just run out and stand in front of them holding hands and preventing them from running through because they are very unwieldy models.
One thing I like about Vindicators and Land Raiders into Thunderwolf Cavalry is that if you shoot them with something and they blood surge into you, you just kind of go, oh no, anyways, and you shoot them anyways.
Yeah. Now in the Stormlance, they do have fallback and charge.
Yeah.
So you want to be careful of that. You can't really tie them up, but you can move block one unit, shoot a second unit to death.
Yeah.
And then the first unit can't do anything, and then you just pivot your guns to that and blow it up on the following turn.
Yes.
That's what you really want to do.
All right. Red Rum with the €5 super chat. Oh, I see how it is. My goalie is thrown under the bus in tomorrow's game versus Eldar Experiments by Jack and Q. Save us, Steve.
Steve will not be making an appearance in this game. I'm sorry to say. Canis is good enough for this list, but I want to try alternate things. But don't worry, you will see a different datasheet on this list in that game. The humble Caladius. He's not humble at all. He's pretty great, and he knows it.
You're going to see some characters from our top 10 character list in my Eldar list.
Yes, you will. The Eldar list is going to be pretty tough for me to, pretty tough hill to climb, but I will be seeing what I can do.
It's very spiky.
It is.
Yep. All right, and then Gamer Geek Jason with a $10 super chat. A lot of these models you talked about are stat checky. Are these kinds of stat check models and lists, for example, 10 armigers, bad for the health of the game?
So none of these really get to 10 armigers level of stat check. A lot of them aren't really like that. I mean, there's always the monsters and vehicles are always going to lend themselves to like the overwhelm approach.
Yeah.
Because they're awkward to move through walls. You just can't do it at all. And they kind of have to get hit if they want to hit, which means their stats are going to matter.
Yeah.
And I don't think stats mattering has ever not been like a fundamental part of 40k.
Yeah.
The stats of your unit has always mattered. Now, 10 armigers is definitely a kind of a list that aims to overwhelm you with the same data sheet. And that's not really something anything other than like the dreadknight is looking to do. The dreadknight is definitely looking to do it. But vehicles and monsters just inherently since the start of the game have always, had like not herd immunity, but like herd defense.
Yeah.
Which is like if there's one vehicle, your opponent can kill it. If there's 6 vehicles, your opponent can kill 1 vehicle.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other 5 get to just operate how they want or some number. They can kill 2 or whatever.
No, totally.
And that's how vehicles and monsters have always existed forever. And I don't really know how you would go about changing that.
No, I
realistically
agree there. I think the way 40k works, just like multiple vehicles is always better than one vehicle, just because your opponent only has a limited amount of anti-tank firepower.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of these, we talked about the stats just because vehicles tend to shine more in the stat department rather than the like, they can shoot out and then fire and fade, which is more the realm of like units and characters.
Yes.
But none of these vehicles we really talked about were like, yeah, you deploy 10 on the line and you run at your opponent. It's a lot of like, they shoot too hard and they're fast. You can pick angles and cut things. And I think that is healthier than the style that's exemplified by like the Spacewolf Stormlance with 18 Thunderwolves on the line.
It just runs
at you.
You either have the ability to deal with this or you do not. We're going to find out in like an hour.
I think if you can break the game down into like a mathematical simulation, it becomes very boring. And at that point, why are you not just like rolling dice at home?
There's also a lot to like vehicles and moving and shooting and monsters as well that is more nuanced than people think it is on its face. Like I've seen people have their army really fall apart on them because they weren't covering their angle so the opponent could pick away at certain things. They weren't making sure they had quantity of firepower back down lanes. They weren't controlling firing lanes very well. There's a lot of skill to moving a unit around and using its stats that aren't readily apparent if you don't have that skill developed.
I think one thing that you do better certainly than I do, is you make sure that if you're going to expose the unit, say it's going out to do an objective or it's going out to kill something else, you have stuff backed up to move into the same position. And what that ends up doing is if you have a unit kind of moving out and your opponent brings guns out to shoot and it dies, if you have nothing that can move into that same firing lane and kind of return fire, continue the fight, then you've just given your opponent free material. Whereas if you have guns down that angle, either you dissuade your opponent from coming out or you can trade up on material. Yep,
that's a pretty big thing. Like oftentimes with vehicles and monsters, especially multiples, you're going to get hit.
Yeah.
And it's about returning fire and counterpunching so that you can turn getting hit into a benefit rather than a downside.
Yeah, unless you're absolutely like demolishing your opponent, you're going to lose units in a game of 40k. That's just like a key part of the game. The stuff is going to die. It's just about making sure that when you die, you aren't trading down, you're trading up.
Yep.
Or if you trade down, you're getting something like points or board state advantage, or like something else that it's important later.
Tempo is also pretty big, right? Like you move a tank forward, so you gain territory. Your opponent responds by blowing it up from range. They don't gain territory. You then push forward with more vehicles, shoot their thing to death. They pop out, they shoot you to death, but you're the one gaining territory every turn, and they're not. Mm-hmm. And you might end the game with no resources, but you have all the points,
yeah,
which is very nice.
Points are the only thing that matters at the end of the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
So All right. Well, top 10 vehicles certainly was a lot spicier than I thought it was going to be.
Really was. A lot of really good vehicles out there in the game right now.
Really good vehicles. There are some we didn't even talk about, like Tank Commander and the Rogel Dorn. Definitely some people talking there. Those could have probably been honorable mentions. They're
probably
quite
could have
good
been.
data sheets.
Yep.
But I think the ones that made the list are just world class.
I agree. All right. Any final closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
Head empty. No thoughts.
All right. See you guys later. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next Tuesday for the top 10 best monsters in the game.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.